Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My guest in this episode is Bashiri Johnson, percussionist, drummer, and producer, and also composer, who has worked with many artists, great artists, well-known artists, such as Michael Jackson, Beyonce, the Rolling Stones, and a host of others. A very busy, creative man. Here is Bashiri Johnson. Welcome, Bashiri. It's so nice to see you. I want to thank you to be on this show, Shaping Your Journey, and this conversation. And actually, before we start in the conversation, I want to just launch it by asking you, what was the very first thing that happened to you? Actually, the first spark that got this whole movement for you going, your whole life going. Let's start there.
Wow. Well, that's a great question. It's a big question because it wasn't any one particular spark. I sort of, I think I started to absorb everything that was happening around me where I grew up. I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and I
Okay.
grew up in the 60s and 70s. So I was absorbing Malcolm X, I was absorbing Hendrix, I was absorbing Sly and the Family Stone, the Beatles, the Who. Everything was going on all at once, all around me. And all of that information became musical and rhythmical for me so that I was able to, I tried to find a way to express myself rhythmically, and I discovered the drum. And that's how I sort of begun, that's how my journey began.
And then did you do like formal studies? I mean, how old were you when this was kind of happening, was forming in your mind? I know we all go through that kind of period because the 60s, of course, the 60s and 70s. Anybody who was fortunate enough to live the 60s and 70s, and especially the 60s, even if you were 9 years old, it was just an amazing time, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yes, I did. I did do formal study. I didn't really get serious about my instrument until high school. And high school is when I started to really study, take lessons, and get really serious about it. But my formal study actually, I was a student of Mtume. Mtume is my mentor. I'm really a descendant of him, and I spent 3 years studying with him and hanging out with him, going to gigs with him, going to his publishing meetings, going to meetings with artists, sitting with him when he was writing his hits. So I really
Beautiful.
learned not just about being a musician and being a percussionist, but I learned about the entertainment business.
Right.
And it sort of helped me to be me, the kind of person I am in this industry now.
Especially now, but even then, Bashir, because and this is one of the things that was always lacking that I saw. I mean, I kind of got it together because I realized, being, I was an immigrant. I grew up in Ottawa, Canada, in a small town, then moved to Montreal, and then went to New York to study. So I got the big picture. I realized what you had to do, and then you work for it. But then you realize you cannot just, I mean, I say just be an artist or just be something. You really have to understand the big picture and how you fit into it. And then, of course, if you want to make something of it, then you have work to do, and you have to be organized, and you have to be, all of the above, like you did. What a great experience that is, working with somebody that exposed you to it. Except, I mean, some of us fall on those things or we seek them, and then
Mhm.
we find them and we do it. But having a mentor like that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Tell us more about that experience.
it was fantastic. I went to a Miles Davis concert, and Mtume was playing with Miles. So I snuck backstage. I told the security guard, I said, "Hey, my uncle, he needs me to help him break down his gear."
Nice.
So security was like, "No, I can't let you back." I said, "Look, my uncle told me to come here. I need to go back. I need to see him." He said, "Okay, go ahead, kid. Go back. Go ahead. Go ahead." And I went up to Mtume and I said, "Listen, I love you. I love your work. I'm a student of the drum, and I really wonder if you're giving any lessons, if you have any students, if you would teach." he said, "Well, I'm touring right now. I'm not really teaching, but why don't you come up to the house tomorrow and we'll see, we'll talk." And I went up to his house and got to hang with him for 3 years.
Wow.
So that it was just really great. Yeah, no, the thing about having someone who mentors you is that you can see how they do it. If there's somebody who's a professional in this business and they are successful, we all kind of wonder, well, wow, how did they get there? How did they do it? How did it happen for them? People are asking me all the time, hey, how did you get to work with this person and that person, and how are you doing it? And the only way to really know is if you can hang with them and see exactly what they are doing. We're
Yeah.
showing up to gigs early. We're professional every time we're out the box. We're kind and considerate, and we show empathy to the artist and to everyone around us. I mean, all of these things are things that I learned and I now integrate into me. So
Right.
yeah, it was quite the blessing to have that time with him.
Yeah, and that goes back a little bit also to the original way we learned things. I mean, back in the how should I say, the roots, the country, where it all started in Africa. When you wanted to learn to play, you went to see that master, you
Right.
know. And it wasn't like you go to register a school and they give you, well, here's what you got to learn. Go home and see you tomorrow. You actually lived with them. You went to get the water. You went to cut down that tree. You went to pick this up, and then he would show you something. But it was an osmosis situation, where the being that person, you kind of undertook the path of learning. How does this work? How does this person become not only great at what they do, but also there's something else. There's something else besides that, because that kind of greatness is limited. You have to have the other part, the human element that you're speaking of. And then
And that
you're,
you also have to have the gift. You have to
of course,
have the gift. Not everybody does what we do, and everybody can do what we do in their own way. But
right,
I think there is a certain gift that is given to certain human beings that they are able to communicate and touch other human beings on a mass level. I mean, look at Michael Jackson, look at Whitney Houston, look at Dolly Parton, look at people like this. They're able to reach. Their reach is far and wide
right.
because they have such a bright gift, a gift that really shines and can be seen through like a whole stadium,
Sure,
can be
sure.
seen in an arena.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
No, no,
and you also have to have the talent and you have to have the expertise through study and working on your craft. It's not everyone is able to just do everything without practice and study,
right.
and you have to develop those skills.
Yeah, there are a lot of lonely hours, and I say to people, when you're on that stage and you're in front of 10,000, 100,000 people, whatever that number is, or 10, you're popular, or you're sharing this with all of those people who were there to see you and the people you're working with. But to get to that point, there are many, many lonely hours by yourself in a room. And if you can get through that, then that's one of the requirements.
Right.
Besides the talent, as you say, yeah. And it's interesting how you put it. These people like Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson, all of these guys. I mean, you've worked with Michael Jackson, you've worked with Madonna, Luther Vandross, Whitney Houston. I mean, I can go. I lost track of the number of people, but that doesn't matter. What really matters is all of those people, including Miles Davis. All of those people we're reaching, as you said, we're reaching people, and to go beyond that, not only the talent, but you really want to do this, and that reaching out is not an easy thing, and it's a far-reaching thing, and it's the will to do this, and the reason. What is your reason to do that? Well, that's what we learned from them, also. I
Right.
I remember working with Celine Dion, and she was at a very young age. This is what she wanted to do, and she was, unstoppable. Of course, there
Right.
was a team. There were people around her. Rene Angelil, who was her husband, and I worked with him with his ex-wife before and doing records, and so you get to see the thought process and what they're really aiming for, and they're aiming high and wide. Like you say, wide is a good word
Mhm.
because you have that burning desire to do it, and you'll do the work, and sharing it too, because if you're going to be around for a long time, look at people like Paul McCartney, also Ringo Starr. I mean, they could have been sitting and they don't need this, but they do. you know and they're really teaching us all the time, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And in your experience working with all of these people, somebody especially like Michael Jackson, because he was a special person. And I had these conversations with Jonathan Moffat, who I've known for years. I mean, we've known each other ever since the Victory Tours when they came to Montreal and played the Olympic Stadium. Those weekend concerts that they used to do way back when it was
Yeah.
nobody was ready for that. And so they had a few days off, and we hung out. He came to my studio, we played, and I got to see from that side somebody who, I mean, Michael Jackson was already great; he was genius, but all of a sudden, on a whole other level, almost overnight, right? That was amazing, and to be able to withstand all of that, and you were part of that later on, also on the This Is It, right?
Correct.
How did
Correct.
that come about?
Oh, well, uh, I got a call from Michael Bearden, who was the new musical director for Michael Jackson for the This Is It tour that they were putting together.
Which
Um,
was the last tour? I mean, the tour after all of those years, and this was like that major thing that everyone was looking forward to. I remember being so excited about
exactly.
that.
Exactly. So he called me up. He called me up like uh, 12 midnight in LA, but it was 3 a.m. in the morning in New York.
Right.
I'm picking up the phone, like, Mike, what's up? I thought something was wrong, and he said, "Oh, listen, I just got the job as musical director for Michael Jackson." I said, "Wow, that's fantastic, bro. Congratulations. Okay, talk to you later. Peace out." He said, "No, no, 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 no. Wait, wait, wait. I want you to be in the band. I want you to come out to LA next week, bring all your stuff, set up for MJ. We're going to start rehearsing. He's going to love you. I want you to be in the band."
Beautiful.
I said, "Well, I can't come out next week because my calendar was kind of booked. I said I can come out maybe in 10 days." He said, "Okay, okay, we'll work it out. We'll get you out here." And I went out and started rehearsing, and it wasn't like I really auditioned. Michael Jackson came in and saw the band playing, and we did 3 songs for him, and he said, "Yep, that's my band." So, that's basically how I got that job. And it was quite an amazing orbit to be in, doing the rehearsals and being a part of the This Is It tour. Jonathan Moffat was amazing. Everybody else in the band, it was just an incredible crew and amalgam of talent. So that's something that was really memorable. Something really special about Michael Jackson that I learned and I witnessed was that he was one of the most humble and loving and kind people, human beings I have ever met. He would come into the arena for rehearsal and he would say, Hello, firemen. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for looking out for us. Hello, wardrobe. How you doing? Bless you guys. Hello, security. Hey, how's it going today?" He would reach out to everybody who was part of this show and part of
Beautiful.
this whole team. Everyone felt like they had skin in this whole journey. And when it came time for us to rehearse or do whatever we needed to do, like the people in wardrobe, they were sewing costumes. They felt that they were doing something that had meaning, that
Sure.
had value, that they mattered, that's how Michael Jackson made you feel. He made you feel that, oh, what you're doing is really special. It matters to me and it's going to matter to the audience. And I want you to do your best.
Yeah.
He didn't really have to say it. He just lived it because all we wanted to do was measure up and be in orbit with him.
Right,
So in
right.
order to be in orbit with him, we had to raise our level of everything, our focus, our talent. We just had to elevate to be able to be in that swirl with him. So that was amazing to experience that time. And I'm really happy that it was documented in the
Yes.
movie, in the video, because you can see it all happening right before your eyes in the documentary. And it's something that is worthwhile to see and to have been captured.
Yeah, no, they did an incredible job. I'm so happy that they did that. I mean, especially in light of what happened, that the tour never, that specific tour never left, but it was
Yeah,
documented. So what a strange story. But I'm so happy that it was released because you really see it in the making. What a team effort that was. And it was so nice that there's no dictation, it reminded me a little bit of the Beatles thing, right? Where nobody told, well, Ringo, you play this, or George, I have a better idea. Why don't you play this? No, they knew they had to come up because the stakes are always high, and people are listening, and people are waiting for that next thing, and it's up there, but it's really up to you to create it. And that's what you're there for. End of story. And it was a team effort. I mean, George Martin just making a small suggestion or just taking what he had and made something with it, and everybody did. And you see that also in the "This Is It" documentary. I was really blown away by that, and as it should be, right? I mean, that's my experience. Everybody is an important part of the machine. I mean, you can't have a weak spoke in the wheel because you don't have a wheel, right? I've always behaved like that, and I was around enough people to learn it quickly that everybody is so important. Even the doorman or the guy who sets up the drums, if or the instruments. If something goes wrong, and that person, if they were not there that day or not really paying attention or not respecting, the whole thing suffers, right?
exactly,
So
exactly. Yeah,
so
the
everybody's
the
as
whole
important as
team,
the
the
other.
techs, the engineers, the backline people,
Yeah.
all the lighting, they are all so important to the whole. That's definitely the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what's really neat watching Michael responding to what the choreographer would say, well, how about if we did this? And he would think about it. And it was like he was being challenged. Okay, maybe I can do this better, or maybe I should do that, or a musical idea. And you're always like serving what was this other thing. It's not like, well, look at me, this is what I want, right? I mean,
Right.
that's beautiful. And I think we all have a lot to learn from that kind of thing, that kind of behavior, because the end result, everybody benefits from, and it's such an incredible collective experience, right? I mean, what you went on with that show with the Cirque du Soleil, right? Did you not?
Yes, I did. I did. Yeah, yeah. I joined the Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson Immortal tour. I was there for a couple years, and it was fantastic. It was really a show for the fans around the world,
Right.
and it was a tribute and an homage to Michael Jackson. And we performed his songs. His voice was used in places, and it was just magnificent. And of course, Cirque du Soleil, you have all of this people flying around you, and people doing acrobatics and all of that all over. It was quite exciting. So yes, I it was my first time playing with the circus, so
Yeah,
a little
funny.
different for me, but it was great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that whole thing. Guy Laliberté, who was the initiator, who started the circus, he and I met because this is in Montreal, right?
Right.
He and I met on the street. He was a street performer, and I was playing with my group repercussion. We were doing a concert in the middle of a street of some big festival, so it's a big, big thing, and there are all these street performers around. And afterwards, he and I got into a conversation. He hadn't started sick yet. So we had a conversation about ideas, and we always have ideas, and so here we are, two people, two crazy people, dreamers, talking about ideas. And then he gave me his phone number, and said, "Here, call me. Well, let's talk some more." And then, I was touring a lot, and he started the Cirque du Soleil. Years later, when I moved from somewhere, I found this note in a box, Guy's number. And I never. And then I realized at one point he actually lived on my street. Yes, in Montreal, in Westmount. And it was funny because, I mean, you never see anybody because you're always in and out. And at one point, I learned that he lived on my street, but I only found out that he had just left. I think he had been there for a year or something. It was- but I mean, that when you when you create such things just from a concept or an idea, it's really, really amazing. And what they've done with shows, Beatles show that they did, the Michael Jackson show. But what are the things that I mean, the journey you've had through all of this? I mean, from people like Miles Davis to Whitney Houston, and all of that. Like, what is the one thing that you would say to people as the experience? As you're going floating from one thing to another. Obviously, you're a great player, and you're as when you're a great player and a great person, you'll always be working as long as you keep your health and your head together. But what are those things like people call you, say, "Hey, I'm doing Whitney Houston. Why don't you come on board with us?" Or do you do auditions? What was your experience?
Well, I've been very fortunate and very blessed. And it's funny. I just did a career day at a high school here in my neighborhood.
Okay.
The principal asked me if I could come in and talk about what I do, and I did career day. And I told the students, I said, "Look, I'm not really a percussionist and I'm not really a musician. What I am is I'm in the rhythm business. That's what I am. I'm in
Okay.
the rhythm business.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
what I do is I apply that mindset and being rhythmic in everything I do in life so that when people need me or they want me, they call me. They don't just call a conga player. They don't just call a percussionist to add some colors. They don't just call someone to play timbales and do some fills on a record. They call Bashiri Johnson because they know, oh, Bashiri knows what this needs. Let me call him, and then I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
So, that's my advice to people and to young people. You want to be in a place where they're not just calling you because you're a graphic artist. They're not calling you because you're a janitor, or they're not calling you because you're a violinist. They're calling you because they want you, your name, John Smith, Jane Doe. They want you. That's the place that you want to try to get to in life. You want to provide someone with the service of you, not the service of being, oh, I'm a great congero, or I'm a great this, I'm a great that. No, the people who hire you, they want to hire you because they don't want to have to worry about what they hired you
Sure.
for. You know, they want to be able to chill, talk to their wife and kids, come back in and say, okay, let me check it out. Oh yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. Great to see you.
Sure.
So that's what I would kind of share about my journey. I've gotten and I've thought about getting to a place where I want people to just call me, not to necessarily call a conga player or call
Sure.
someone to play bongos, or, oh, we need some udu, or we need some strange colors, or you got any metallic stuff, just call me and then
Right.
I will deliver.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. That's like, you call Steve Gadd because
Exactly.
that's what you want to. He's not going to play like himself necessarily, but what he does,
Yeah,
it'll make what you do at another level.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's very well said, and I think that's the thing that should be thought of more and more because, of course, you have to get your trade together, your tools, but also I mean, the personality, what makes you different from anybody else? And not that the other people are not okay. It's fine, but you want something you want something special. And most people do, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then the personality, the negative thing. I mean that goes nowhere. You just neutralize as much as possible any of that kind of stuff, so that you're doing something positive because the negative stuff is going to be there anyways. You just put it over here and don't let it get in the way, right?
That's
Eh,
right. And this business is really it's a unique business that we're in. It's an original business because uh, there are a lot of people in this business who haven't gone through the university of life or the university of whatever it is that their instrument calls for, or the university of being a great vocalist. A
right,
lot of people are in this business just because they have a lot of people, a lot of followers, or they have
right.
a little bit of notoriety, or someone else wrote them a pop record, and then all of a sudden they're a big, huge artist. So there's all kinds of people that we're going to run into, and we have to interact with. And we not only have to be talented at what we do, but we have to be psychologists, we have to be therapists, we have to be mediators. There's a lot of hats we have to wear in trying to be the best at what we able to deliver. So this business is challenging, but it's also worthwhile and fun and rewarding.
Right. And then also, I mean, learning the business part of it. When I say the business part of it is the professional end of it, meaning how do you handle contracting? How do you handle people hearing about you? How do you handle keeping your mind straight when things aren't happening the way you think they should be happening? That kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah,
How,
exactly.
how,
That is a very, very important point that you bring up. How do you handle the business? How do you handle the business side of this entertainment business? And it's a tough question. Like, sometimes I get asked, well, how do you know what to charge? How do you know what to, tell someone your fee is? And it's an interesting question. There's the universal law, which is the law of income, which is you will be paid commensurate to what the market will bear. But I subscribe to the law of energy exchange, because sometimes you work with an artist who doesn't have a lot of resources, and they don't have a bucket full of monies to pay a lot of people, but they have something that they can exchange with you, and you can do a barter energy exchange for what they have to offer, and then you can give what you have to offer, maybe at a reduced rate, and then they owe you a favor, or they
Sure.
can do something for you. I try to do a lot of that now. Like, now I'm not always asking how much does something pay. I try to do things that I love now. And if they say, oh, well, you know what, I really don't have a big budget, I'll say, no problem. You just owe me a favor. And, I have a lot of chips on a lot of people, but it's worthwhile.
Sure. And that's a good point because it also brings up the other idea of, see, I grew up in a tiny village in southern Italy, where everybody helped everybody all the time, and
Mm,
you always owed everybody. And that was just part of the deal because you always need something, but it was a interesting collective. Somebody was
yeah,
building a house, and they You say, well, so and so does bricks, the other person does cement, this one does that. So they all work, do something for each other. Nobody spent a lot of money, and everybody has a place to live. Everybody has a roof. Everybody has everything. And then somebody
Exactly.
gets married. Well, everybody goes and gives them gifts, and the person who's getting married has the resources now to get into a house, or et cetera, et cetera. And then it's somebody else's turn.
Right.
It's like, and it's the same thing where being helpful, being, I always say, how can I help? And the idea of our purpose in life. I mean, the other purpose apart from living it and making things work is if people are around you, well, you become as helpful as you can for the other people's success, which is always the same principle, right?
Right, right, and that's what we do as drummers and rhythm people. Our job is to help maintain the groove so that the person who's out front can just soar and do their thing on top of what we are layering behind them. We're giving them a foundation that they can then propel themselves and do whatever they have to do
Right.
to reach that person in the back row because they have this stable foundation of rhythm. So that's what we do. That's what we do, and it's such an important role.
Yeah. I was just thinking as you were saying that when you were doing rehearsals, for example, just getting back to the Michael Jackson while you were rehearsing with Jonathan, like at some point you'd say, well, you're going into a song and you're playing it, and all of a sudden something that you're doing you don't feel is working just right. How would it work? Would they say, well, can we change that? Or you say, what would you say? Can I have just 2 minutes? I want to try something with Jonathan just to see if this will work. And what do you think? I mean, that's the approach I would take. But
Yeah.
is that what would happen in your experience in that one?
Yes, yes, that happens. See, the thing about, let's say, for example, with MJ, he knows his music backwards and forwards from A to Z. He knows every single part, every single background note. He knows all the guitar parts. So if he hears something that's a little out of sorts or not what he's used to hearing, he will tell you. He'll say, "Hey, oh, no, 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 you need to change that, or no, this needs to be this, or this needs to be that." But there are a lot of times when you're trying to work something out with someone in rehearsal and something is not flowing the way you need it to flow. I think it was in your best interest and in the best interest of the tour and the artist to just say, "Hey, hang on one second. Can I just hear what the bass player is doing, or can me and the drums just play together for a second? Or you know what? Let me just lay out of this for a second so I can double check on what works best for me to play here." That is really a good technique to make sure that you're delivering and giving the best of yourself in
Right.
situations. So yes, I mean, uh, it doesn't really happen all that much because usually the musical directors and the artists that I've worked for, if they hear something, they will chime in and they will say, "Oh, can you change this? Can you change that?" Usually, the musicians they self-correct and they have their own sort of sense of auto perfection that they just correct themselves.
Right.
But a lot of times the artist will stop and say, "Oh no, listen, why don't you guys sing in unison here?" Or, "Oh, listen, don't put any fills until this," or they will chime in. The
Yeah.
artist
Yeah.
will chime in.
Yeah. And of course, for us, since we are not like the artists in the front, not dictating, but where we need that support. When we're in the supporting role, I mean, we're serving. So whatever it needs, that's what we serve, right? Or work on that to make it as best as possible, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's the business we're in. We are definitely serving the music and serving the public, So, but we also have to serve ourselves too. We got to feel good about what we're doing. So
Right.
that's important as well.
Right. I'm just curious because I mean, one question, and I remember this now as you were speaking. I remember when the tour was getting back to MJ. I'm sorry, but I just one question that always came to me. I said, at that moment when it was announced that MJ had passed, and now the tour, all of a sudden, and before everybody's eyes, this big tour that all the musicians cleared their schedule for, and we're looking forward to, and not just the musicians, but that whole production. I mean, this is huge. A lot of people. So I mean, of course, you feel awful that this happens to a person. I mean, he was 50 years old. That's crazy. It just, it was another chapter of genius beginning. Anyway, without laboring that point, and I think we all felt that, what what happens in the minds of all those people in that production at that moment? Say, apart saying, "Oh my God," and then looking at, okay, now what am I going to do? Or what's that going to look like? Talk about it that a little bit because I think we don't talk about so much of those things. How do you deal with those kind of aftershocks, after effects?
Right. Yeah, that's it's an important question, and it's a tough challenge for us all. I mean, we all uh, loss loss is part of life. So it's all part of the ebb and flow of life. We're going to have all kinds of people come into our lives. Those people can go out of our lives. We'll come into people's lives. We'll go out of people's lives. So this happens. The experience of losing MJ was definitely traumatic for us all, and it was very hard and difficult. But I believe what enabled us to continue on and to feel like we should just keep on keeping on with ourselves and with MJ's message uh, was just the sheer fact that his message was it's important for us to continue doing what we do, continue doing what we love, continue to reach people and try to touch people all over the planet. I know that's what he wanted to do, and he wanted that for the tour. So he would have wanted all of us to continue on to be our best selves in every other future situation that we were going to be in. And that's what I did. I just continued on working and doing what I do. I mean, I'm very fortunate that uh, I there's a lot of different and other kinds of music that I love, that I play, artists that I work for. So I just continued on doing what I'm doing, and not to stop in my tracks, but to just keep on moving forward. And it's tough. It's tough because we go through stuff in life that can present us with major challenges, but that's what living is all about. It's about getting up, stick and move, and keep on grooving. So
Right. And making it work. Yeah. And I mean, and as you said, he had a very strong message. And I remember that one song. What about? There was one about that he did in the Grammys, if I'm not mistaken. There was one song, and I can't remember the words, but it was a very strong message coming from, the just people being nice, being good, being positive, taking care of people. That whole
oh yeah,
message.
yeah. I mean, his song book is just all about consciousness and humanity. Heal the world. What about us?
What about us?
Black,
That's it.
black or white. Uh, the Earth song. These are all great messages, and so yeah, his message just still resonates, which is a beautiful thing because his message is going to continue to resonate because these are important things for us as human beings to consider.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very interesting. Now, I'm just thinking on another note. You mentioned when you're going to these career days because I had this experience as well. Made me think of something else. in this day and age where AI is coming on board and we're being attacked left, right, and center. Well, I say the word attacked, but just because it's treated as an alternative rather than just an addition to, and it was funny because I was asked to do the same thing for my kids at one point. Actually, my daughter's school, some years ago, they had a lawyer, they had a dentist, they had professional, all of this. And because my daughter was there and I kind of was known in the school, they said, well, we should have maybe a musician just to talk. And I don't think they took it really seriously. You know what I mean. Talking about careers, so. The room was full when as I arrived, and the facilitator was there, and he's looking at his watch, and this is going to be a quick couple of questions, and so I said to everyone, I have the first question. I said, how many people listen to music? Everybody's hands went up, and I said, okay, second question. How many people listen to music every single day? Everybody's hands went up. So I said, so there are careers in music, right? I said, see you later. Any questions? So the facilitator was like, what? I said, we need doctors, we need mechanics, and they're going to be there because we've created these things and these structures. But music was there before us, and without it, there's a famous quote that says, a village without music is a dead place.
Right.
And so, I mean, we're musicians and music around us that we create or be part of. But here's an interesting one. Because you always have the naysayers in every period of musical history. The people who are saying, okay, now with AI, we don't need creators. Because AI has figured us out, and it'll just create things we need in 3 seconds. And then we don't need to pay anybody.
Oh, well, that's I, of course, I totally disagree with that.
As I do, yes.
You are going to always be needed and necessary. What I do is always going to be needed and essential and necessary. So, the thing about technology is, I came up and I started playing during the birth of the drum machine. During the beginnings of the drum machine. The first drum machine that I learned how to program was the SP12,
Okay.
SP1200. So, I mean, what I chose to do back in those days was to embrace the technology, to use the technology as a tool in my toolkit, just another instrument in my bag to use for my self-expression. I did not think of the technology or the drum machine as a threat or as something that's going to put me out of business. And the
Right.
same thing today with AI or next gen or whatever's going to happen. I'm going to use it as a tool for my self expression because I have a solo voice. There's only one me, and I can't be duplicated. So I'm just going to use the technology to my advantage, in every kind of if I need it, because it's just another tool in my bag.
Yeah, and here's, I mean, I want to add to that because here's the discourse, and I take it further because I say to when I make presentations, whether it's to politicians or to a mixed group of people, I said, a funny thing has happened. I rarely now hear anyone of any position of decision making use even the word culture. They'll use
Mm.
everything else, but it has been removed. I said, I wonder who wrote that book that you had to remove that. But we know that the creative, if we don't have that, how can you have creative economy? How you have creative building of a building, creative of coming up with AI? So it's actually more important now to invest in the creative, which then makes a better AI,
Right.
right? And then to your point, the AI only learns from what's been there and recreates. So a mind like yourself, all the things that you have learned all your life, which is part of all that input now in your mind, because our brain is such an incredible machine. You you become original. You become who you are, a mix of all those things. So you can help those tools that you add to what you're doing, and whatever tools are there, you add to it because by itself, it's not that interesting.
Right.
I mean, I did the same because I would, when we were doing those sessions in the 80s, especially when you had to deal with drum machines or electronic percussion and electronic drums, everything you had, and they would call you, they'd say, "Do you have the Lindrum?" Right. In fact, I still have the original one. But I would sell them each time one came out, or the MX5, all the other ones. I don't remember all the numbers now, but every time one would come out, whether it's the Simmons 5 or the 7, whatever it is, you had to have it to be in. But we used it, and I'm sure you did the same, creatively, so that didn't replace us, but we would use it as another part of the tool, so it became more interesting. And then that
Right.
changed, and some of those went away, but we're still there, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So is that the way you see AI?
Well, I see I just see AI as a remote control.
Interesting.
For
Okay.
me, it's just really like having the remote on your couch and you're just scrolling and it's a tool to help you sort of get around to whatever you want to get around to. But I'm the controller. Okay. AI for me is just the remote. So same thing with the drum machine. It's just a remote, it's not me. It's just a remote.
Right.
So if I channel a creative thought, or if I channel something that is a something artistic that I want to realize, I might need to pick up that remote and kind of scroll to help me get to what it is will help me realize and manifest that vision. But the remote can't draw. The remote can't play my drum. The remote can't do anything that I can do. It's just really a tool. So for
Right.
me, it's just really a remote and a tool.
Right. Right. So therefore, the importance now more than ever of investing in the creative process, in education, cultural education, on all of those things, more than ever, because otherwise the machine it just goes around in circles.
Right.
If we don't have the creative in place to be able to guide it, right?
You're absolutely right. And you're right. I mean, just to amplify what you just said, we want to invest in young people to be able to have conflict resolution. How do I socialize with other cultures? How
Mm,
do I maybe speak another language so that I can communicate with maybe one other group of people on the planet rather than just my little tribe? Um, how do I cook my own meal? Um, what's it like to maybe be married? Can you maybe talk about what that's like? Or these are the kinds of things that we need to learn: humanization and socialization. And part of that is art and culture and ancestry. So, that's all important. Hopefully, people will keep in mind that these things need to not be wiped out, but they need to be funded because they're so
sure.
important to humanity.
Huge, huge, and they're bridges. I mean, I do a lot of work in Cuba. As a percussionist, I mean, I studied ethnomusicology as well, so I've always been interested in the interplay between cultures. How does this end up here when it came from here, and when you realize things make so much more sense.
Right.
Speaking the languages, then you understand things. I mean, I speak 4 languages, and you can understand those people what they're saying a lot better. It was really interesting for me when as further on I'm getting in deep in situations where in a traditional context you have the rumba, in Cuba, which comes from Africa. And then you have in southern Italy the tarantella and the hand percussion, the hand drumming, with the same chants. And it's all in like ternary. So 6/8, 12/8, whatever. And then you realize that many of those things you can superimpose them, and they become the same thing. And I've done the experiments. I've done concerts with superimposing that live, and we would be exchanging. I would be chanting in Calabrese, which was my traditional language, and they would be chanting the traditional rumba from Matanzas, and we'd play together, and I say, you see, I mean, we talk about the universality of rhythm, of music and culture, but it goes way beyond that. Right? And then,
Absolutely.
I mean, we can do it on the surface. All of us go anywhere on the planet and we all understand each other and you don't have to say a word. But then there's another level where if you understand where things are coming from, you can go in those rabbit holes and make it even more interesting on a whole other level, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience having worked with so many different people and different projects that you get involved in, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing about my journey is that I'm not really a folklorist. I'm not a folklorist. I'm not a folklore performer. And I have crazy respect for that world and people who do that. And if that's what they do, I have crazy respect for it. But I'm a rock and roller and I'm a pop artist, so so I utilize and pull from a lot of different sources so that I can deliver rock and roll and popular music and rock and roll. That's really my lane. And
Interesting. Yeah.
so it's interesting because there's so much that I don't know. There's really so much that I don't know. But then when I get around my peers, they think I know so much. you know?
Well, you've
And
done
I
so
think
much.
that's
Yeah.
because I am such a good intuitive. And I think it's because I'm a good channeler. All right. I'm
Mm.
able to channel what works for me through the tools that I have at hand. So if I'm playing with my drums or any particular instruments or whatever, I can channel and intuit what's going to sound best for this record or for this movie or behind this artist or whatever. And it's not necessarily a traditional folkloric part. It's something that, wow, how did Bashiri come up with that? And that's how I've been respected and appreciated by my peers, not as a folklorist, but as a rock and roller and as a pop percussionist,
Right.
it's very gratifying because I have mad respect for those guys who are doing what they do.
Right. And when you say rock and roll, it quickly, I think I read that you did some work with the Rolling Stones. So, in a case like that, let's put ourselves in the context. Like, what record or what did you do with the Stones, for example, as an example?
Yeah, well, I played Live Aid,
Okay.
and at Live Aid, I played behind Mick Jagger and Tina Turner. So that was my first foray working with Mick. And I recorded with the Stones. I did a remake of Sympathy for the Devil that was produced by the
Nice.
Neptunes. So, but I've never worked with the band, the Rolling
Okay.
Stones, live. Just recordings, and then I played Live Aid. So
Nice.
those were my two times working with them. Uh, haven't been on tour with them
Right.
or on stage with them all together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what they were doing. I mean, you can't always get what you want with the choir and all that. That was, I mean, that's huge. And anytime they would do, I don't know if they would still be doing it, but I remember some of their tours. They would hire all these young choirs and local people to be part of the show. It was a big production of those songs, right? Sympathy for the
Yeah.
Devil. I mean, those are huge productions. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. The the other thing that I'm wondering, when one is in a situation where it's something like Live Aid that they did, this whole project, how did that come about? Do you remember
Which project?
the Live Aid project?
Oh, wow. Well,
Because that was a big
I
one.
mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, of course, history says that Bob Geldof had this idea where he wanted to give support and aid to famine victims of famine in Africa, and he had this idea, and he made it happen so that there were these huge concerts that happened in Philadelphia and in London. And I was in Philadelphia, and I played with the Hall and Oates band, but we were sort of the band that played for Mick Jagger, Tina Turner, um, Eddie Kendricks and the Temptations, and Hall and Oates. So we were on stage for like, I don't know, 45 minutes. I mean, we did we did a lot of stuff. Funny. What happened to me was, um, first we did a set for the Hall and Oates, then we did a set for Temptations, um, then then we did a set for Mick Jagger, and then Tina Turner comes out, and Mick Jagger and Tina Turner do a duet. And by the time Tina Turner came out, I was exhausted. I was like, oh my God, I don't have anything else in the tank. I was like, oh my God. So I had to kind of like really compose myself, get it together, and like, okay, I have to sort of pace myself, because we have to do another two songs with them. So
Right.
it was early in my career, and it was a learning lesson where I said, you know what? You have to give, but you have to always keep some reserve, because
Yes.
you can't just blow yourself out. You can't run the marathon and get to the finish line because you still got more ways to go. So, but yeah, that was early in my career. It was one of my career highlights, and really special.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And working, that's very well said about always having never, I mean, having something in the reserve because you may have a surprise, right? and you
Exactly.
and you have to be ready. You can't be completely exhausted or completely out of gas, right? That's a good one. Yeah. What are some of the things that I mean you're working on? Because I know you worked on video game music, all kinds of other things in the music world. We say music world because sometimes we just think records or stage, but there's also film. There's also the other side of things like games. There's a lot of music for that, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I've done a lot of different things. I've worked on a couple of the Mario games. I've done this other game called From Dust, which is a game about uh, this world of people who create their own world, and they have control of the elements, so they can control the oceans and the mountains, and it's an interesting game. I do a lot of films. I've played on a lot of films, commercials, of course, and people's records. Tons and tons of records. I mean, I'm on thousands of records. So, uh, I've done a lot of studio work, and of course a lot of big tours. What I have coming up for me is, I have an album coming out soon. It's called Drum Songs, and that's sort of my take on a lot of popular songs that we all know and love. It's a two record CD, so that's a big project. And then
Beautiful.
later on, I have another record coming out called Speak. And Speak is my consciousness raising protest record about the things that are going on that we need to look at. and we need to sort of be conscious of. So that's just going to be a digital record, and that'll be out soon. I'm working on a documentary about my life growing up in Bed-Stuy, and I was bused to school to Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. So, I had an interesting journey growing up, and how I became interested in the drum, and then how the drum took me all over the world. So I'm working on that. I'm working on a book about myself and about healing and therapy. I have a trademark company called Rhythm Healing.
Okay.
I own the trademark. I have some products in under that umbrella, so I'm in that space as well. And I continue to just try to be the best dad and husband and community person that I can be. So that's kind of what I got going on at present. I'm still playing. People are calling me, and I'm doing a lot of shows, a lot of TV, a lot of gigs. I just did the Oscars, so that was
Nice.
exciting. And I got a bunch of other things in the calendar. So I'm blessed. I'm busy, and I'm healthy. So
Yes. Yes, and that's important. Without that, everything else is so secondary and so unimportant. Yeah, yeah, that's nice. And I think what what also, excuse me, what also really helps is like what I'm reading also is like being curious. I mean, all of us, the more curious you are about things, the more you delve into things, the more successful you are, the more satisfied you become about things. Whether it makes a lot of money or it becomes popular, that's secondary. But the fact that you're doing it, you know, and you get it out there. I know that I have this, during the COVID years, I had all of these things that I had put on shelves, and then I was finally able to do them. I had designs. I'm a bit of an inventor too, and so I finally got the time to get those things out patented, and you know how long and laborious that is. But so this is your creativity, all the things you wanted to do and say, try and do them right. And I'm glad you're doing that with your records, with the books. I think it's important for us to get all those things out, because there's always the fear. I live in fear every day that I won't make it in time to get that thing out or that idea out in time. It's just I need another 100 years, so I'm renegotiating my contract. I don't know about you, but but I mean, it's so nice to see that being active and being helpful in the community. I mean, you said it really nicely, that no matter where we are or where we think we are, we're still a human being. And I think if once you have the microphone, I think you should use it to be helpful and wisely, because people will listen. And once you have people's ears, we can be so helpful and inspiring, And I think that's important. And I'm glad you're in that space and creative. It certainly keeps you out of trouble. Because it's usually people who are not thinking in that regard. Trouble will find them, and then they waste their lives or their time. But being able to do things as you're doing, that's beautiful. So nice to see. But so any before I mean, we can talk forever. But I wanted to ask you, what are anybody listening that I mean, part of this whole series that I'm doing is to not only document people that I respect and I've been watching most of my life and in their work, at a distance and enjoying, but also what can we share that can stay there as an inspiration? What would you say to somebody who's listening? You say, "Here's what I think."
well, there's this concept that I came up with called IRV.
Okay.
And I think as long as every day we are illuminating, that's the I, illuminating, we want to make sure that we are seeing and that we see. R is for resonating. R is for resonating, meaning that we want to be heard. We want what we have to say to reach as many people as possible, and we want to listen. And V is for vibrating, to vibrate and make sure that we are felt, that what it is that we have going on inside of us, if it's love, if it's gratitude, if it's joy, even if it's a bit of sorrow, whatever, we vibrate that and send it out into the universe so that other people can feel it and that it can affect them. And I try to keep Irv on my shoulder every day with everything that I'm doing. And I think if we are maybe conscious of that, illumination, resonation, vibration, that's something that, if we're going day by day, step by step with Irv on our shoulder, I think it could be helpful for us to have a better world.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly that's the nice thing what we can think when we were looking from the other place and saying, yeah, I'm glad I did that, and I'm glad I was helpful, and glad I understood that, right? And hopefully others continue. I'm sure others will, as long as others see these beacons or these points of references that I think are important. Whether they're musical or philosophical, I think that's important. And yeah, it's really nice of you to have taken the time finally get this together. Took a little managing of time, and I know you're such a busy guy, but thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and it's always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Oh, thank you, Aldo. I'm pleased and I'm honored, and thank you for having me on board.
And as I always say, to be continued.